Welcome to Lifelong Learning Education and Trina'sBooks.com. I'm so glad you're here, and I am so excited with my guest today and to have you meet him if you don't already know him. If you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, this guy is probably your hero because he's done everything. It's the magnificent Marvin Payne. Woo, a round of applause.
Hi.
Welcome, Marvin.
Thank you.
So seriously, Marvin has done everything. You've been in films, you've done music, you teach music, you write poetry, you write plays, you've won awards, you've been, I don't know, like in everything for years. And I've been such a fan for so many years. I'm kind of a giggling idiot right now because I've been such a fan of yours.
Well, that makes me happy. Thanks.
So what I'm hoping that we can cover in just a few minutes, because I know you're a busy guy, is some advice that you might have for those who are hoping to duplicate what you've done with your career, which is a big ask because your career spanned so many different elements of music and theater and acting and film and all that kind of stuff. So if someone has anywhere near the talent that you have, what advice would you give them on how to begin and break into the industries?
It's not about you.
Oh,
I don't mean you, Trina. I mean, it's not, it's the aspiring artist. It's not about you. You have the responsibility, of course, to sharpen and hone your gifts and to learn your craft, but ultimately the application of it and the reasons for it are not about you. It has to be for somebody else. I'm trying to think of
that's actually really brilliant advice.
I'm trying to think of an artistic discipline in which that would not be true. And I cannot think
I
of
don't
one.
even think that's true in business. You know, it's all about serving your audience or serving the companies if in the business world, that kind of thing. That it's what good you can bring to the world with the talents that you've been given.
I would say that. Very you said it very well.
I think it was Pablo Picasso. Actually, I think I've seen this also attributed to Shakespeare, where the quote is, the meaning of life is to discover your unique talents, and the purpose of life is to give them away. It's pretty good. Yeah, right?
Yeah. I think Picasso or Shakespeare would be happy to own that.
Me too. Yeah. Trina Boice said it. Oh, I don't know. Well, so which was the field that you first got into? Because like I keep saying, you do so many different things. When you started off as a college student, I think you got a scholarship for writing. So was writing plays the first thing that you broke into?
No, the writing scholarship, actually that came a little bit later. My first scholarship was music performance.
Oh.
That got me into school initially, and then later on got a little chunk of scholarship for poetry writing, creative writing. But I began professionally as a singer-songwriter and did that in a very focused kind of a way for about 10 years. If I did anything else, if I helped to write a play, it was because, oh, I'm a songwriter and I'm helping to write a play. Or if I wrote a book, it was, oh, well, I'm a songwriter writing a book. Or anything I did, I was a songwriter who was doing whatever it was. But then around 1980, I kind of stumbled onto stage and discovered that acting was about the funnest thing ever. And so that sort of became the main thing. And that gave rise to playwriting. And also, since a lot of the theater projects I was involved in were musical, that also kept drew on the musical well. Film just kind of kind of snuck in on the side because I was an actor, so I did a bunch of that. But live performance is what I prefer.
That's your favorite thing?
Uh, yeah, yes, yes.
I think I even watched you many years ago at the Storytellers Festival in Utah.
That could have been there.
And I think I saw your son recently do it also.
Yeah, he is Sam, my son is he's become a storytelling guru. He's got a daily radio show on BYU Broadcasting, um, having to do with storytelling, and he tells around the country. Um, he takes it very seriously. I I do a little storytelling event once a year at Alpine Days where I live. And then the one that you're talking about was probably, boy, that's ancient history.
A long time ago.
Yeah, I think it may have been the second year of the Timpanogos Storytelling Festival. I told a story called The Plane Maker, and that's the last time I've actually been an official storyteller at that festival.
Oh, really? Well, what an incredible legacy you've left and talents, your genetic talents that you've been passing on to Sam, for example. That's awesome. And you've also done children's TV. You've been on PBS and um, for music and for stories. What is out of everything you've done? What has been your favorite project and why?
Oh, okay. Well, that would have to that kind of has to break down into categories.
Okay.
Acting, I have two favorite projects. One was as in a play written by Tim Slover. It was a play about the trial of the murderers of Joseph Smith, and it was historically sound. It was based on a book written by Dallin H. Oakes called Carthage Conspiracy. And anyway, I played the hard swearing, hard drinking, profane attorney that prosecuted the murderers, and that was kind of my that was sort of the. I mean, I've played Sweeney Todd, I've played Henry Higgins, I've played
You like playing the bad boys, huh?
all the standard guys, but this one was this was just kind of a high point of just legitimate theater acting. I usually come, I usually fall into kind of an emotional trough after closing a show because, you build a family and you build it fast and you build it with a lot of purpose and very intensely. And, and that's always hard to take apart. But this particular one, I went into a trough that resulted in a clinical depression.
Oh,
And this was in 2002, and I still take medication for it. So
my goodness.
that was a real high point. The other acting involved a species transformation uh, because I played a dog, and
I remember that one.
that dog, even though I wrote the character Boo Dog in Scripture Scouts, that character knows things that I don't know. I mean, I
Oh,
put words in that dog's mouth, and then when the dog spoke them, I suddenly realized, oh wait, that dog knows things that I don't, and that was kind of fun.
I loved that and listened to that in my car with my kids as they were growing up. That was
Oh,
such
I'm
a
so
sweet.
glad you listened to that in your car because Boo loves to go on car rides.
We did. We love it. I mean, I still have it. My youngest is now 19, so I still listen to it, but they're like, Mom. But it was very, very sweet. And you're sitting in your sound studio right now. Tell us what projects you're working on right now.
Well, right now, I mean, like this morning, there's a fella in town who wrote some lyrics. They're kind of He's LDS, but the lyrics are kind of evangelical. It's just kind of about, well, it's a little boy who is just deeply anxious over the issue of what happens when I die. And so he puts that question to his dad one day riding in the pickup truck, and his dad doesn't know what to say, doesn't have an answer. And and so later on, the little boy in high school has a friend who invites him to learn about the Savior, and just the idea of resurrection just kind of ignites his soul. And so he goes back to his father and says, "Yes, Dad, this is the answer." And it's kind of it's a sweet lyric. And anyway, I set it to music and have been producing it. And today was just kind of reviewing the mix to see if it's ready for general consumption.
Oh, that sounds so sweet. And so many of your projects do have a spiritual nature, don't they?
Well, yes, yeah, that's kind of the whole idea. When I said earlier in our talk, do it for somebody else. Yeah, it's do it for somebody else. Do it for the least of these, but then you're doing it for the Savior, and that's that's the somebody else that it can be about. Uh, because that's been characteristic of my work over the decades, I seem to happily attract those kinds of artists who want who want who want to get their most precious feelings, really their most sacred feelings, uh, into a form that they can share. And so I do a lot of that here in the studio, helping people realize those particular dreams.
Well, I think that's so admirable. And what advice would you have for example, Latter-day Saints who would like to create work of whatever form that can cross over to evangelical audiences, Protestant audiences, Catholic audiences, Christians in general? What advice would you have for that?
Uh,
Because we're
let
all on the same team,
yeah, right.
supporting each other whenever we're speaking of Christ and testifying of Christ, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think that I think that hmm, I think the shortest route to actually and the safest route to actually getting something shared is to just be very direct and skip the middlemen, skip the gatekeepers, if you will. And the technology of the internet is just such a remarkable gift that I mean, you can just put stuff up and then let people know it's up, and then invite people to respond to it, and if it has value, it's going to be accepted. It's going to be liked. It that's the shortest and most direct, and I think the most successful way to do it. That's not the path to fame and fortune. The path to fame and fortune goes through all the gatekeepers, who are there to decide, primarily to decide whether or not you can make enough money for them that it's worth their time to let you through the gate. and and that's something that you shouldn't have to worry about, really.
Well, and you've done a really great job as self-employed artist all of these decades. What advice do you have for someone who wants to do this as their full-time income by themselves, to be self-employed?
Wow. uh, I don't know what I could tell someone else. I can tell you about me, uh, and this may be encouraging or it may be just cautionary, which is that in order for me to make a kind of a living, I just have to do a whole lot of things. I mean, I am full time doing what I love to do, but I could not make it as a guitar instructor because there's not enough there's not enough students there, and I'd burn out. I couldn't make it as somebody that just lives in a studio and helps people's dreams come true, because in this market anyway, there just aren't enough people. Uh, I couldn't make it as an actor alone because not enough projects, and people outside of film are reluctant to pay actors
And you're
sufficient.
very selective too. You don't want to just act in anything
Well, yeah,
that's not to your standards too. So
I've turned aside a number of things,
yeah, I'm sure.
but and as a, as a performer, um, that's, if you want that to succeed, then you got to be willing to travel and sacrifice a lot of family time. And so what I do is sort of succeed moderately at performing, acting, helping people with recording projects, teaching guitar students, uh, writing projects, and the uh, the amalgam of all those enterprises yields a moderate living. So
Actually, I think that's really good advice.
I would just say, diversify like
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Now, that kind of runs against the notion of focus, do something very well, do it better than anybody else, and you will rise to the top. And that's sort of the American dream, sort of everybody's, heroic quest. But um, maybe I should say, yeah, subscribe to that. But it just, I can only report on my own experience, which is that, I do everything I do as well as I can, but I have to do a lot of things.
Well, I mean, I said, I think that that's really good advice, especially to diversify. If you have someone who's a musician, for example, they can perform, but they could also teach, they could possibly write it. Um, if they're as multi-talented as you are, but to look for other avenues, because sometimes we think in a box,
Mhm.
and because we have the internet, there are so many other streams of income that could possibly come because of the internet and our access to technology. So I think it's good advice to look at other options, not just other options, but additional options, additional ways that you can be paid to use your talents, which you certainly have.
Well, this kind of gets back to it not being about you. Uh, for a good many years, particularly when singing, singer songwriter was my primary focus, I would be just really loath to perform somebody else's song, unless it was just a dynamite, and usually if it was not a hit, some written by somebody that I know and love, then I'd say, yeah, I'm going to include that on this record, or I'm going to include that in this performance. Uh, but as far as, singing the hits, getting people to kind of go, oh, I know that one, and kind of hum along from their seat, that would have seemed, um, seemed like stepping down somehow off the pillar of artistry, and the pedestal of artistry. But now I tomorrow night is our weekly practice for a classic rock cover band, and it's Creedence Clearwater, and it's Beatles.
Oh, my husband loves them.
But and I'm fine with it, because it's something I can do, cheers people up, kind of, makes people happy, puts people in touch with good memories, and and if Bob Dylan wrote it, fine, let's do it, um, and so a whole lot of ego has fallen aside, and I think that I'm probably a good deal more useful as a picker and a grinner, and a cheerer up of the world than
We need
I
that.
may have been at one time.
Well, what I love too, and what I admire about you is that you have made a life sharing your talents, but doing what you love There's this great video on YouTube of Jim Carrey. He was speaking at a graduation ceremony, and he shared the example of his father, who actually wanted to be a comedian, but
Mm.
just didn't think that that was really a practical way to earn a living and raise his family. And he was worried about the finances of it, even though that was what was in his heart. So he became an accountant and did that for a short time and then lost his job.
Mm.
And Jim Carrey learned the lesson from that. He said, you can fail at things you don't want to do. So you might as well try to do what you do want to do. And, yeah, you might fail at that, but at least you tried. Or you could be great at that. And of course, Jim Carrey's dream was to be a comedian. And we know that that worked out very well for him.
Now,
So I
okay, now
admire people who are brave to go for their dreams, which is what
th-
you've done.
this raises an interesting question, though, and that is uh, the whole question of what is success. Uh,
Yeah.
got a lady living up the street from me. Her name is Nina Lee, and uh, and she contacted me and said, "Hey, I'm just full of songs. Can you help me out?" And she could kind of play the piano a little bit, enough to sort of communicate what the song was going to be, but she couldn't accompany herself beyond that. And she's a fair singer, and her songs are terrific. So she came to me, and we just entered into a collaboration where I just produced her songs,
Wow.
and you know, 3 or 4 albums worth, and and she. There are a number of people that have been touched by her music. Uh, she has not come anywhere near to getting her money back. Uh, but that's kind of not for her what it's about. Um, Now, if you're going to be professional and you're looking to support a family or something, then you have to take that into serious consideration. But if you're not going to be, it comes down to, again, why you're doing it. Um, I've got. I used to tell people that came to me asking if there was a future for their song, or if it was worth spending money in the studio to get something produced. Uh, I used to ask them if they'd ever had a dream of taking a vacation to Scotland. And sometimes they would say yes, or sometimes I'd have to come up with a different destination because Scotland wasn't appealing to them. But the whole idea is, yeah, for a trip to Scotland, you'd save up, you'd study the music, you'd look in your family history to check your connections to the land. You'd go there, you'd take a million pictures, you'd do a lot of postings on social media of your whole trip. You would never ask yourself, is this going to pay, this trip to Scotland? because that's not even a question. No, you're buying a trip, you're buying an experience. And then and these days, if you have a great experience in Scotland, it's so easy to share that. You just post a video on your Instagram or whatever. And you can share the joy of your dream coming true. Now, uh, I think there can be value in sharing your trip to Scotland and not thinking about the profit motive at all, because that would just be irrelevant. I think there's more value in being Nina Lee and writing a song about your feelings about the Savior and spending your money on that and touching some lives pretty deeply. Um, and she, I mean, if what she did ever turned a dollar, that would just be an extra blessing, because that's not really what she's doing it for. Um, because I do this full time, I have to think very carefully about how to turn the dollar. But ultimately, that's not why I do it. If I wanted to make money, I would be in real estate. I mean, why would I be sitting, you know, this is there are other things that you do to make money, not this. Uh, but you can make a living if you're lucky and if you diversify and if people are kind. It boils down to why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? Do you want to make a buck? Sell land, you know? Uh,
But that's even true in business. Everybody always says you have to discover the why. Why are you doing real estate, or why are you doing music, or why are you doing any of the professions that you're interested in? You have to find your why, and that why will give you that motivation for when, the real estate market goes down or whatever. Everybody's going to experience difficulty in whatever career they pick.
but whatever career they pick can also be a tremendous opportunity for reflecting the light of truth into lives around you.
I agree.
If you're primarily motivated to sell a particular property as a real estate person by the desire to get this particular family into a circumstance that's going to bless them, that's going to show, and you're going to be a more successful realtor if
That,
if
yeah, that
it's
comes back
not
to
if it's not about you.
right. I was going to say it comes back to the very first thing, the very first piece of advice you've given us. All right, I have two more questions.
Yes.
So you're going to be speaking at the upcoming LDS PMA conference, and right,
That's
and
what
so I
they
just
tell me.
wanted to get a little sneak peek of maybe a few things that you're going to be sharing with the audiences there at that conference.
Okay. The the novelist Flaubert, the French novelist, wrote this passage shows up in a book called Madame Bovary, which I have never read, but a dear friend shared the quote with me many, many, many years ago, and it runs something like this. Um, we make we tap crude. It's because it's in French. I can get away with any translation I want, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so I'll just say not in the way it was delivered to me. But we tap we tap on kettles, rude rhythms for bears to dance to, while we long to make music that will melt stars.
Oh,
And that's what I'm going to talk about is kind of kind of bringing your best kettle tapping to the game, and seeing if maybe the Lord might see see clear to endow it with power that will bless people, because I know from my meager efforts that he can do that. And that's what I'd like to communicate.
I love that. That is so sweet. And that wasn't even a French translation. I love how you expressed that sentiment. That was beautiful. All right, last question.
Hmm?
And I ask this question of all of my guests, and that is my big thing is, how do you get to your next level self? How do you become the person that you see in your mind's eye? So, what do you do every day to try to make yourself a little bit better each day? That's the question.
That's a good question. Um, work harder, I work harder. I I I very assiduously review my work. Like this tune for "Daddy Can't We Play" is it's the boy that has the question about what happens after death. Uh, it took X number of hours to record all the instruments, which I played myself.
Wow.
Uh, it re, it took, you know, a shorter time to lay down a vocal, which I sang myself. Um, it took some time to write the tune, which I did on that keyboard right behind me. Um, but what really took the time was the mixing of all those elements. Several guitars, a bass guitar, a drum set, some keyboard, some harmonica, vocals, uh, a resonator guitar, a banjo. I mean, there's lots of elements in this thing, and maybe, I don't know, 28 tracks of
Wow.
different percussion instruments and so forth. That were all pretty fun to play, but then it's all there, and how do you organize it in a way that's gonna uh, be the smoothest, be the most engaging, be serve the message in the best way. Uh, a favorite scene from musical theater is in Sunday in the Park with George, uh, by Stephen Sondheim, when all the picture it's about George Seurat, who was this pointillist painter.
Surrealism, yeah.
Yeah, and he's got this famous painting that I can't remember the name of, but it's a whole bunch of people on an island in the Seine River, I believe, who are just out for an outing on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
It's like 35 people or something, and and this scene really moved me when I saw the play. Is that is depicted by actors, and he goes in and he adjusts the hat on somebody, and he reaches out and he turns somebody's uh, aspect just slightly to the left, and he just goes in there and he just kind of these little tiny details that just really moved me, because you got these 35 people. Can't you say, well, they're nice looking people, I painted them good, we're done? No, he goes in there, he's adjusting the hat. Matter of fact, there's a song about adjusting the hat that's really quite wonderful. But that's kind of what I'm doing, not on the level of Seurat, but what I'm doing with this tune is spending hours and hours and hours just going, should that banjo be competing with that electric guitar? Which one is making the more important statement? Which one supports the meaning of the emotional thrust of this particular portion of the song, and just all those little tiny, tiny, tiny adjustments. And and the mix has taken 3 times as long as just the recording of it and the writing and all the performing of it. So working harder and really paying close attention to what you've done before you share it. That's something that's much more characteristic about what I do now than the way I did it 30, 40 years ago.
Wow. Well, and you're such a master, and I love music. It really speaks to my soul, and yet I really don't have the talent for it to make music, and I admire that so much in you. How that's so impressive that you were able to use so many instruments, but to be able to, I love how you said which instrument is serving the message, and that's the one that you put forward as you're mixing it, as you describe it. And I just think that's such a talent. So thank you so much for sharing your talents with people like me and the rest of the world for decades. And I want you to know all of your sacrifices have been worth it because you have blessed so many people's lives. So thank you, thank you.
That's very kind. Thank you very much.
And thank you for spending some time with us. So where can we find you next? Where do we find you online?
Oh my goodness. I have a website, marvinpayne.com,
Okay.
that it receives a little bit of attention from me, every 13 or 14 months. Uh, but there's much more about me than anybody could ever possibly want to know on that website. I think there's access to some music on that website. Uh, I've got music on on iTunes. So you better hurry while there's still iTunes. They're going out of business. Got an album called the last album I did was actually a few years ago of just Marvin songs. Is called Roses and Hope, and that's actually the only one I've ever put on iTunes because it's the only one I've ever felt deserved to be on iTunes.
Okay. Well, we will look for
There
those.
it is.
Again, thank you so much. Be sure and subscribe to this YouTube channel and to all of Marvin's stuff as you can find it online. And thank you again, Marvin, for spending some time with us. And again, just for sharing who you are and your heart with us all these years.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye for now.